this is Socially Triggered, and this video is going to be on embracing racism. Now, hear me out. So, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, embrace racism. He's going to be like promoting white supremacy or something like that. No, I'm not going to be promoting that, so don't get that idea. But what generally I see is the following. I see a pattern, and I'm very into patterns. That's kind of my whole livelihood depends on pattern recognition. And one of the patterns that I always see is the following. You come to an argument with facts and logic, and what ends up happening nowadays is you get shot down because the person just calls you a racist. So, for example, like if you say, well, the police aren't the problem for Black people in America, well, and you say, well, there's 7,000 murders that happen within the Black community, that's a problem. And there's only maybe 9 unarmed Black men killed each year. And of those 9, probably only 1 or 2 are questionable. So what's the problem? That's a logical argument. And what people will say, well, they'll just respond with, you're racist. And then what ends up happening is you say, well, no, I'm not racist. I'm just stating the facts, and people will keep on pushing the point. They won't ever actually respond to your logical arguments. They'll just focus on you're racist. And what that does is it puts you on the defensive because you're defending the claims, accusations against you that you're racist. So what I want people to try, and this is kind of an interesting experiment, is to embrace the racism and say, yes, sure, I'm racist. Now let's discuss the problem that is at hand. Let's, sure, I don't care. Sure, I'm racist. Because it takes all that power away from them. Because if you don't have to defend yourself on the racist claim, you can focus on the actual argument. Sure, I'm racist, but what is your response to this argument? Why is it that this is happening? Why is this the not being looked at? If I'm the racist, if I'm the one that has all the problems, like that I'm, wicked white supremacist, whatever, then why is it that I'm looking at the bigger problem and you're looking at the smaller problem? Why is it that as a racist, I'm looking out for the most Black lives or the ones that are actually in desperate need of attention? So I look at it that way, where I'm saying, let's embrace the racism term as not a way to derail us and just sort of knock all the wind out of their argument, their fake argument, their straw man or whatever it is, and just address the actual issue. And I want to show you where I kind of use this. I was trying to, one of the things that I do, I'm not a troll per se, but I do like to go to left-wing media and comment on what they are reporting and really address the things that they're saying and kind of bring facts to the battle and say, hey, look, did you really look at this correctly? Did you really do a proper analysis? Why did you make the assumption that it was racism? Why not look at the facts of the case? So TYT is the best for this. And actually their audience is the best. Like of all the audiences on any channel, and I'll say this, any channel on YouTube, TYT has the best audience. And what I mean by that is their audience is the most engaged. Like if you comment and you go against the narrative on TYT, they'll just dogpile you. They'll come at you at all ends and try to take you down. And it's really interesting to see. No other channel have ever had that kind of experience. Usually you don't get many replies or any replies. But on TYT, they're very aggressive and they will battle you out. and it's kind of interesting. So I like to go there and try to engage and try to see if I can sway some minds. I know it's probably not likely that I will sway any minds with logic, but it's something I like to do. It's something. It's my fun thing to do. I don't know. So I'm going to show you a thread that is a typical thread that I experience whenever I go into TYT. I come out with facts, and then I get shot down by emotional arguments. So let's take a look at this. So this is so TYT did this one about the regret of a police officer who kneeled during a protest, and they made some crazy argument, and I was just like, I was responding to it. So I'll read what I wrote. The cop was right to realize it was a mistake to take a knee. The protesters want blood, and capitulating to them only encourages further bad behavior. George Floyd didn't die because of interaction with the cops. He died as a result of poor health and drug overdose. The autopsy exonerates the cop. The video even shows the cops were actually trying to save Floyd's life. No one seems to notice that the paramedics arrived only a few minutes after Floyd was arrested. Think about it. It probably takes them 10 to 15 minutes to arrive. So they must have been called early on. The other video shows that the cops knew Floyd had drugs on him and possibly was under their influence. Paramedics were called because Floyd was seen foaming at the mouth. They were trying to give him help. The control technique the cop used to the untrained eye looks like a knee to the neck, but it was really just a means to pin Floyd down so that they could prevent him from doing harm to himself and others. There was no racism here, no murder, just a cop following the rules set by the police handbook. I recommend people read the autopsy and the police handbook. Both are available online and show the cop performed his duty. I know it's easy to get wrapped up in emotion, but the riots are costing more lives, and the false narrative only further divides the country. So I try to, give a reasonable argument with, facts of the case. And here's the replies I get. Everything you said was straight bullshit. Okay? That thug in blue is a coward. He was never sincere about taking a knee. He's just an opportunity to have a photo op. The NYPD is the biggest gang, nation's biggest gang. Okay, so this is not taking the knee in terms of the George Floyd case. This is, as I said, the video that I was responding on was there was a cop who took the knee in order to calm the protesters, and then later regretted taking the knee because it didn't show solidarity with the other police officers. So that's what he's commenting on. But the point is, that's a totally emotional argument. It's like, it doesn't address the points that I made. It doesn't address anything. Now, to go further, you must have seen the wrong video, and then wrong, the cop killed him. Only you and Trump would believe that kneeling on someone's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds is non-fatal. So this is another misconception. If you look at the George Floyd video, George Floyd's body is behind the wheel, behind the car, the police car. And you can only see the upper part of George Floyd. You can see his head, his neck, and the police officer on him. And you can sort of see that the police officer is actually on the back, towards the back of George Floyd. So what actually is happening is his weight is not on the neck, it's on the back. just it's a pin. The neck it's not even, there's no weight actually put onto the neck. It looks like it because we're only seeing the top half of the video. But if you look at if you saw the whole scene, you'd probably notice that the cop's weight is actually on the back of George Floyd, not on the neck. So that's actually what happened. But you'll see how the argument works on their end. They basically just say, "Oh, you're a Trump supporter, or you're the enemy, or you're a racist." It's typically that kind of claim. They don't actually provide proper arguments. Okay, so next one is, I watched the video and I was outraged at first. This is my response. But sometimes our eyes deceive us. The autopsy shows the cop didn't apply force to the neck. There was no choke or block of blood flow. The autopsy shows that Floyd had 3 times the lethal dosage of fentanyl in his system. Looking at the technique shows that the move is actually considered very safe, and it is a preferred technique because it protects the person being arrested. The handbook has very strict guidelines, which the cop actually followed. And they accuse you of liar. So here's their response: "Stop lying. You always felt that thug in blue was right to murder that man. Own it." Okay, so this is the kind of claim like, oh, if you don't agree with us, if you don't agree with our outrage, then you wanted that guy killed. You wanted him murdered. And that's sort of a typical kind of response that, it's all or nothing. You're either with us or against us. Even if, you can't have even a slight disagreement. You have to be all in. And I made a video on the topic. My first video, and if you watch my earlier videos, you can see this. My first video, I called the cop murderer. I started investigating and realized there was a lot more to the story. The evidence supports the cop. We can't let emotion cloud our vision. So basically, I'm going through the process. And the next comment is, "It seems like you let your racism," see, this is where the whole video topic comes into play. They make the call to racism. You don't agree with us? Oh, you're a racist. And it seems like you let your racism and prejudice cloud your judgment. Okay. So the next thing was, so the need is some kind of fentanyl sensor with what a great superpower. All the cops are exploited, and there are 0 cops stopping bad cops from harming citizens. And then they bring in some straw man. 43% of cops abuse their spouse. We need to fire 43% of our like cops over and start over. Okay. So this doesn't really make much sense, but I'll try to explain it. So basically, the first part is that he's saying that all cops are evil. It's just, if one cop is bad, even if, like, let's say the cop involved with the George Floyd case is proven to be guilty and he did something wrong. Well, the truth of the matter is there's about 10 million arrests that happen in the U.S. And a lot of these arrests that happen are under very stressful and dangerous circumstances. So that's a lot of interactions between cops and, individuals, like citizens. And if you think about it, we're hearing about maybe 10 a year where something bad happened. So that's 1 in a million. It's really low. And to say, okay, well, because there was one bad case, well, then we have to throw out the whole system. That seems a little bit extreme, doesn't it? And so that's kind of the way that they're thinking here, that, all cops, one cop is bad, that means they're all bad. It's kind of a very weird argument. You'll notice that when a lot of people on the right speak, they always say not all, because, they talk, a lot of people on the right talk about the norm. the what you normally see, the average situation is the following. And then they say, well, of course, there's exceptions to the rule. However, when you hear people on the left, it's the opposite. They basically say, there's that exception and we have to base the whole thing on the exception. It's like, it's just a weird way of thinking. You'll notice that a lot of times on the left, they'll do the following. They'll say, well, there's one person marginalized, so therefore everyone is marginalized. And that's typically a way that they think. They don't see that there's a bigger picture, that you should look at the norm rather than the extreme. So it's kind of a weird way that there's a difference in the way that people think between left and right. So I sort of try to address this in my final comment. The second video shows that they found a baggie with drugs in it. The autopsy of Floyd shows that he was under the influence of meth and fentanyl. And the cops knew that he was under the influence. Fentanyl killed Floyd. Okay, so I addressed the person's straw man about the 43%. The stat about 43% of the cops is a straw man and not relevant. I agree there is an issue. Cops are involved in high stress situations that plague them after their work is done, and it may cause abuse at home. The stat from the study shows that the number is actually between 20 and 40%, and which is about 2 to 4 times the average rate of abuse. Clearly a problem that we need more support for the police officers facing stress. So basically, I sort of concede that there is a problem there, but that has nothing to do with the case at hand. So you notice none of the arguments that they presented address my points. Now they could have said, well, I looked at the autopsy too, and I read it, and there was whatever, some evidence to point, but there is none. Like if you read the autopsy, there's no evidence. It totally exonerates the cop. But they didn't even take that effort. They just want to follow, this narrative that they keep on hearing, that, oh, evil cops, evil white racist cops kill poor black man. And they don't want to take either the time or effort. They don't even want to challenge themselves. If you look at my arc in the whole story, at first I came out against the cop because I was too emotional about it. I looked at the video. I watched the video and I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? They're not caring about this person's safety. They're showing no emotion. And obviously the person is under stress. the George Floyd, I was worried about him. But then I learned more. I challenged myself. I went out and said, hey, what are all the facts of this case? And I realized that my initial assumption was wrong. And I admitted that I was wrong. I was willing to change my perspective when the facts showed that my perspective was wrong. And not many people are willing to do that. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to ignore all the mud that they'll throw at us and just focus always on the argument. Focus and say, hey, look, I don't really care if you think I'm a bad person. I don't care if you think I'm racist. I don't care if you think I'm bigoted or prejudiced. All I care about is the truth. And as long as you keep on hammering that truth in, they can't break you down. They can't, because you're speaking to truth. You're not speaking to emotion. And when you speak to truth, there's no argument against it that they can provide unless they provide a real argument against it, where they say, well, you're missing this fact. Then there's a discussion there. But as long as they continuously just do ad hominem attacks, there's no real debate there. And you just got to ignore those ad hominem attacks, embrace the racism, and just move on with the argument, move on with the discussion. So I hope this makes sense. Like, I hope this shows how to deal with these kind of arguments. Um, and it takes a thick skin because it's very easy to get like emotional. Like somebody's calling you a name, they're calling you a racist, they're calling you this, that. Just be like a duck. Let the water roll off your back because those those are meaningless. They're meaningless words because they're not addressing the real thing. And you should actually see them as what they are. If somebody uses ad hominem attack, if they use like some kind of bogus argument, that means that they have no case and they don't have the facts on their side. And you have won the argument. And you should feel good about yourself at that point. You should realize that you're winning the argument and they're desperate. They're just throwing whatever they can in order to, you know, get out of really debating the topic. So this has been my kind of look at the typical arguments of, you know, like these typical social justicey people, these typical people who do not look at the full story. They take some emotional argument and they hurl insults like racism. So embrace it. Don't let it ruin you. Focus on the argument and win the day. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please check out my other videos, and thanks for watching. Bye.